What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of Athletes Wisdom Podcast, here where we go over how athletes can not only build a business, but also marketing, the branding and marketing aspect as well. Today we have an amazing guest. Today we have Acacia Lofton. She is actually a current athlete here at Clark Atlanta University. So I just want to go ahead and welcome you. Appreciate you for being on. How you doing, Acacia?
Thank you. It's actually Acacia Lofton.
Acacia, I apologize.
You're
Okay.
fine. You're
Uh,
fine. And I actually retired from athletics this last season.
wow. Okay. So I guess that's a perfect place to start, right? Well, first, for the people who aren't familiar with you, can you just kind of go ahead and give like a quick background of who you are, kind of how you started your journey and where you're going to?
Of course. So my name is Acacia Lofton. I'm originally from Northern Virginia and I attend the illustrious Clark Atlanta University. Yes, that is an HBCU and I'm very proud. I joined the track and field team in the fall of my freshman year, and it was really an experience. I tried pole vault during my sophomore year of high school, and I was naturally good at it because it's based off of back and core strength,
Mm-hmm.
and those were just two muscles that I was pretty secure in. And so I did it again in college, and it was a great experience. My freshman year, I won a gold medal and broke my university's record as a freshman, and I recently retired this season.
So, for one, congratulations on breaking the school record. That's amazing. But
Thank you.
what made you retire, especially after, recently breaking a record?
I definitely think a huge part of it was just having way too much on my schedule.
Hmm.
I'm also a member of the Philharmonic Society and University Choir at my institution, and that's like having another sport. It's like going to
Hmm.
another practice.
Gotcha.
And trying to balance being a finance student, I'm also a current intern in venture capital and private equity, and school and choir and track and modeling on the side was a bit too much. So I had to cut out two activities that weren't necessities or priorities, and track was one of those activities. I love pole vault,
Hmm.
but I wasn't a huge fan of like running the 400 or high jump. I really just liked my specific event. And I know that it's a huge time commitment, so I just had to let it go.
Gotcha. So, if you do end up getting more time later down the line, would you do track and field again, or would you just kind of say, you've kind of moved on from that?
I would definitely consider doing track and field again for like a graduate school program while I'm maybe getting my MBA,
Hmm.
or just coming back for the conference championship. But I don't think I'll come back for a full season again. But you never know.
Gotcha. So, kind of tell me a little bit about the internship that you spoke of. Like, what exactly is that about, and kind of how did you get into something like that?
Well, I am an intern with University Growth Fund. It is the largest education based private equity fund in the United States, I believe. They came to my university for our professional development Friday. I'm a business student, so it was required for me to come, and I was just interested in the company and learning more in alternative finance.
Hmm.
Hopefully long term I'll be able to do private equity, and I'm just really appreciative and blessed to have this opportunity to be working with University Growth Fund. I have another internship over the summer, so I'll be taking a break, but I'll be right back at it in the fall when I get back to Atlanta at Clark.
I like it. I like it. So, I know you said alternative finance. Is that something that you want to eventually start your own business in, or would you like to work for like a top end firm to do that? How would that go for you?
Hopefully, I'll end up working as an analyst in a private equity fund post
Hmm.
undergrad. Maybe long term, I could found a company, but right now, I'm really focused on just perfecting my craft, hopefully, and becoming the best analyst possible. It's a lot of modeling work, a lot of
Hmm.
Excel, and I have so much to learn, and I can't wait to get started.
I like it. I like it. So, is that based on your passion, or is that just a skill set that you're extremely good at?
Track and field or private equity?
The private equity aspect.
I definitely just say it's more passion. It's something I'm interested in. I've always been into numbers, always into math, and I was always very social. So I knew business was a great place for me. And then learning more about finance, private equity is just really interesting. Venture capital as well. Um, Venture capital is investing in startups specifically, while private equity is just companies that are not publicly traded on the stock market yet. They haven't IPO'd yet, I believe. So just learning more about different companies and about investing is really interesting to me, and I hope to be successful in it.
So, what originally started you? I know you said you're good at math and you're good at numbers, but is that what originally started you, or was there like something that gave you the inspiration to start to get into that, or was it, someone that you looked up to in your family? How did that kind of first come to fruition?
Well, I actually don't have any family in finance or close family, but really was the catalyst for this experience was the brothers at Morehouse. I
Hmm.
attend Clark Atlanta University, which is in the AUC. So the
Atlanta
AUC
University and
is
colleges, yeah. I'm in
yes.
Atlanta, so I know.
Oh, dope, dope, dope. Yeah, so Morehouse is right across the street. They have a great business program, and just learning about business, finance, marketing, management from Morehouse MBA and meeting with some of my brothers from across the yard really inspired me, and that's what got me into private equity.
I like that. So I know that I'm gonna pivot a bit into NIL. I know that when it comes to NIL, right? NIL is such a new space, and there are a lot of athletes making money in this space, but not a lot of athletes know the financial literacy aspect. So have you ever thought about maybe combining the two? Kind of teaching your counterparts in college athletics a bit more about not only just the equity side, but just the financial literacy side as a whole. Have you thought about maybe a bridge between that you could possibly help, create?
Absolutely. I was at the NIL Summit this weekend and I met with several companies and mentioned them coming to the AUC, maybe doing like a meetup or having a quick meeting with some of our student athletes just so we can learn more. And I would love to be like a liaison to introduce that to more people because I know that the market is looking for young Black talent, and the AUC is a great place to start or to continue a partnership.
I like it. So, I don't know whether to say former or current college athlete, but being a college athlete, right? And being, in the midst of NIL, what are some of the disadvantages just from what you've seen that college athletes have when it comes to NIL, maybe understanding contracts, the financial aspect? What kind of is some of the biggest needs there?
I definitely say understanding contracts and taxes. Those are definitely two very difficult subjects. People go to school for years to learn about, contracts, lawyers. So those are the two biggest parts. And I'm glad that they were able to touch on that at the NIL summit because it's very important. And even I have a lot more to learn about that.
So I know you said they were able to touch on taxes and contract law and things of that nature, but what specific things did they say about it, and what are some of the strategies that, if they said any, that they're going to put in place to help college athletes with that need?
I think just continuing our education, and TurboTax actually was there at the NIL summit, and you can work with them, of course, to get your taxes done. So I think just representing the company and being present was a huge part of it. And then during one of the panels, they spoke about financial literacy, personal finance, financial services. So I think it was just a great learning experience.
So, how was the overall experience of the NIL Summit? I recently had a couple guests that were actually there this past weekend that I was able to interview. And one of the things they were able to tell me was not only was it very informative and transforming, but that you had to get sent by your school in order to actually attend. So, how was that being sent by your school, and how exactly does that work as a whole, if you know?
Well, I know most athletes are sent by their school. My first year, I was at the inaugural NIL summit and I was sent by my conference. And then this year, I have an NIL deal with Meta through the Empower 2.0 program, and they sponsored me this year. So that's why I was blessed enough to attend. But it's actually a very beautiful event. I made some great friends, built some very close relationships with other student athletes, and met with some great companies both this year and last year. And it was truly a blessing to come back for another round.
So, what was one of the differences that you were able to see from last year's NIL Summit event compared to this year's, and like ways that they were able to improve, kind of make it better for the student athletes and things of that nature?
They separated the administration and coaches from the student athletes. So during the panels, the conversations were specifically for us. And I think that that was great. I wish they would have had more breakout rooms like last year. I think that was very fun and interactive. But I made sure to ask questions during the panel, so it worked out. Another thing that was changed is they had more financial literacy, I think. They
Hmm.
had financial literacy panels the first time, but they really went in depth and got some great people to speak. So that was really exciting and informative.
Now, I know you said that you were part of the NIL Empower movement, and Hasna and Gabby Anderson, I was able to actually get on the podcast, and they were both part of that same movement. How has it been being able to meet some of these people? Because, from my understanding, this was the first time meeting some of them in person. How was that experience being able to kind of build the relationship more, and what does that do for you in the coming years?
It was a beautiful experience. I'm so happy to meet with the other girls and even the people who work with Meta, like Nick, Becca, my mentor, Jordan Rogers. Um, we came together and took a bunch of pictures, made a bunch of TikToks, made lots of content, and really had a great night. They took us to Ponce City Market in Atlanta. We were at the rooftop. It was a beautiful view. They had food for us, and I was really excited to meet everybody. Another thing is just building relationships with your peers. As a student athlete, you can get super busy, and sometimes your social life does, you can prioritize it as much as possible. And making connections with other athletes is just always fun. It's always a beautiful experience. And I hope to see some of those girls again.
Can you explain a bit more the benefit in your eyes of kind of connecting and building a relationship with a lot of your student athlete peers, especially when it in regards to NIL and how it might help with that?
You definitely can learn from your peers. And another thing is just learning from your peers, networking, and collaborations.
Hmm.
So as you move forward in the NIL world, social media is a huge part of it. And collaborating with fellow creators can definitely boost your following.
Hmm.
And also learning from other creators who may be doing something a little bit different than you. So you may be a gold medalist, but somebody else has 100,000 followers. So you can still learn different things from each person. And that's why it's so important to build new connections.
How is the content part? Because you've mentioned content a few times. How is the content aspect and how important is that in the NIL experience? And maybe even kind of go into how not important it is, right? Because the content I feel like is definitely important, but I feel as if maybe some people put a bit too much energy into perfecting that when there's still other possible ways to benefit in NIL.
I definitely think that content is a great part. It's a great avenue to show your personality and be more personable. So it's not just the number on the field, it's a human being. So people get to see your personality, they get to see your values and interests, and that might actually help you get an NIL deal.
Hmm.
So on the field or the court, you might just be a point guard or a center. But on social media, you might really like anime or really like classical music or drawing. And then you can find companies based off of your personal interests that align with your personal brand. So that's why I think making content is great. But another important factor is, of course, being successful within your craft. If you are an incredibly successful athlete who doesn't have as much content, sometimes those people have even more followers because people know them from their craft. And that's a huge part of marketing because even professional athletes, some of them don't have the most Instagram pictures or aren't the most social, but we know their names and we're still fans.
So, if you don't mind me asking, how many NIL deals or partnerships have you been able to take a part in?
About 14 or 15.
Wow. Now, during that time period, was it how were you able to obtain some of these? Did you go out there on your own and kind of reach out to people? Did you, I know some people have agents. Like, how was that process for you?
Well, in the beginning, I was definitely reaching out to companies independently. I did that
Hmm.
for a long while. And then I went to the NIL Summit, continued to reach out to companies, got a few more deals, and eventually I signed with an agent via Redshirt LLC. And I worked with them during the fall of my sophomore year. I decided to end that partnership after retiring from the sport. And now I can still reach out to companies as an independent influencer and, of course, use being a gold medalist and a former athlete as like a little marketing tip. But I'm not doing as much in the NIL space, and I hope to get deeper into it in the future.
So, with a lot of these partnerships that you were able to partake in, I guess I have a two-part question to that. Are some of them still going on now, even though you've retired as an athlete? And then within those partnerships, how was the compensation aspect, right? Because I know sometimes they give you products, sometimes they put your face on a billboard for branding purposes, sometimes I might actually give you actual physical money compensation. So how was that on both ends?
To answer the second part of your question, compensation in the beginning, I was doing several partnerships maybe for products. My first NIL deal, I was definitely paid for every post. It was a clothing deal with Dope Clothing. Shout out to them because they gave me my first deal and I was so excited about it. But I was compensated for every post, whether it be on my in my feed or on my story. I did a couple paid for product deals just to get a feel for the market and to build up my resume. And then eventually I only did paid deals. So there was compensation for every post and anything with the company. And then what was the first part of your question?
The first part was, were any of the NIL deals still going on even since you've retired?
One, what did continue post retirement, but it's now ended. That was in the winter of 2022.
Gotcha. So, how was some of the negotiating aspects, right? Because I know you said you were able to reach out to a lot of these companies originally, and that you were doing that for a while, and you were able to actually get some NIL deals. How was the negotiating side of that, right? Because you don't have anybody negotiating on your behalf. NIL is new, right? So there's still a bit of leeway and wiggle room on what companies are willing to do and what you can do. So how did that work out for you?
Well, initially, I just did some research to see what creators of my size were charging. And then I actually asked for more than I wanted, just in case the company said no, so that we could negotiate to maybe the price that I did want. For some companies that worked, some companies said no, and some companies negotiated. But I know that as a young student athlete, especially a young woman at HBCU, that the viewers that I have can make the company money. So,
Hmm.
of course, I'm going to negotiate with that in mind and hoping to be compensated for my hard work
Hmm.
because as a student athlete, you don't work for free. Typically, you have a scholarship.
Hmm.
So I wasn't trying to start that.
So, in the beginning, were you just trying to partner with any brand, or were you still intentional with what brand you wanted to partnership with?
I was always intentional with it because as a student athlete, I didn't want to build a partnership with a brand that didn't align with my personal values. I'm a Christian, and so any brand that had negative publicity or any weird symbols that I wasn't comfortable with, I wasn't going to reach out to them. I knew that I liked clothing and modeling, but of course, I didn't want to wear anything too sexual on my page because that's not the brand that I have personally. So I just kept that in mind when reaching out to companies. I'm not going to do any partnerships that I don't want to do or that would negatively affect or reflect my personal brand.
So, give a tip for, say, any college athlete that might be watching right now on why that might be important both now and later down the line?
It's important because everything you do reflects on your personal character and integrity, and brands will look at that in the future. So if you're just partnering with anybody and there's controversy, you represent that brand. So that might tarnish your image or it might have a negative impact on your brand. Your viewers might have a bad taste in their mouth as a result of something that the brand did. So it's really important to be smart, to be intentional, to do your research because you are an extension of that brand once you have a partnership.
So I want to pivot a bit into your athletic days. I know it's not too far off, but kind of tell me about a bit of some of your accomplishments, right? I know you've said that you're a gold medalist and things like that, but kind of tell me a bit of your journey of how you kind of started in uh, uh, sports and how you were able to essentially get to that gold medal.
Great question. I have been an athlete all of my life. I believe I started dance when I was 3. I did volleyball late elementary school, all throughout middle school, and in the beginning of high school. And then I found track um, the fall of my freshman year of high school. And that was my first time doing it. I didn't finish the season. I wasn't super serious about the sport. And then I came back in my sophomore year, and that's when I found pole vault. That time I didn't win any awards, didn't go to conference, didn't represent my school or anything like that. I was really just doing it for fun. And then I stopped doing sports after that. I didn't plan on competing at all during college, but I heard that the track and field team was offering scholarships. So I came and spoke with the coach and pitched myself and came to practice. I remember the first day of workouts in October of 2021 for track and field was like 400 repeats, and we had an uphill mile. I remember during the uphill mile, which was our warm up, I was second to finish. And then for the 400
Uphill
repeats, I
mile?
believe, yes,
Oh my goodness.
we did it every day. We did it every day. I still do it sometimes on campus. It's a good workout. But we had, I think, 10 400 repeats. And out of 9 of the 10 400s, I finished in first place during my first day of practice because I just wanted to show that I was dedicated and hardworking and that they made the right decision putting me on the team. So I wanted to put my best foot forward. Eventually, I continued working out, continued working with the team, and came back for a season in the spring. Competed, got hurt a couple of times. I got a concussion 2 weeks before our conference championship, which was a few days after I was announced as first in the conference for pole vault. So I got cleared for the conference championship the day before I competed. And the day I competed at our conference championship was the first time pole vaulting full out. And I was blessed enough to win a gold medal and break my school's record, which was incredibly exciting. And I was very proud of that.
Nice. That's a nice story as far as how it happened, right? Like, I feel like I, for one, I didn't know that about you, but I feel like that's something that should highlight a bit more, right? You started off as a walk-on, quite literally, and you did end up getting a scholarship, correct?
Yes,
So start off as a walk-on, you ended up getting a scholarship. Then from there, first day of practice, you beat everybody 9 times out of 10, and then ended up having a concussion 2 weeks before your, was it, you said conference finals or regional finals?
conference championships.
Conference finals, cleared the day before, and then got your first ever gold.
Yes.
Wow. How did it feel to win that gold, especially how everything kind of happened, especially just within that 2 week period of getting the concussion and then being cleared the day before? Like, how did that feel?
I was very proud. I had to call my parents immediately after. I actually was a little upset that day. I remember I wanted to vault at least 3 meters. That was my goal. I
Hmm.
vaulted 2.9, So as soon as I was done, when I didn't make the last bar, I like walked away and calmed down for a minute. And then I came back and, of course, shook everybody's hand, gave hugs and everything. And then I was presented with my medal about 15, 20 minutes later. But I remember when I was competing, I believe I beat the other two girls in the conference by about half a meter. So at one point, I was just vaulting by myself. They had already received their placement. So as soon as they were done, I, of course, went over, shook their hands, and spoke with my coach before continuing to compete.
Yeah, I actually looked up how much you beat him by. I think the second person was 2.45 meters.
Okay.
Yeah, so I thought that was when I saw that you're a GO champion, I was like, I like to do my research on whoever's coming on the podcast. But that, for one, that is a large, large gap. Did you go on any competitions even after that event, or was that your last pole vaulting event?
That was my last pole vaulting event. I actually had a very, very severe headache after competing, and my coach took me out of the competition for the rest of conference, so I wasn't allowed to compete at all.
Oh, wow. So, were you really in the best position to honestly compete that day, thinking about it now?
Looking back, I definitely wanted to win gold,
Hmm.
and I knew that I could. And I think that I did my best to make that happen. I could have sat out conference and just waited to heal completely,
Hmm.
but I did want to compete. And I was cleared. So I could have sat out, but I was given medical clearance. So I think it was okay.
So, how did some of your teammates feel when they found out that you weren't going to, that you're essentially retiring? Because I know that when you compete with people for a while, you compete with people on your team and your squad. Although you all may not do all of the same events, I know that you all are still pretty close knit and kind of trained together on a lot of things. So, how did they feel when they found out?
I don't think it was like too sad for them. I think that they're fine and really just focused on competing themselves, hopefully doing better in conference than we did last year. I believe we placed eighth overall. So everybody just wanted to do a great job in the coming season. And I think that everybody was just really focused. And I wish them all the best. They did so well this year. I believe we got second place in the SIAC conference for our women's track and field team. So I think everybody was just really focused on doing well and focused on themselves.
Is there any last piece of advice you'd give any college athlete that's looking at this in regards to maybe competitions, NIL, and maybe even in the financial literacy aspect in regards to NIL?
I'd definitely say do your research. Uh, the NIL summit was very informative. It was huge, very educationally based, and I learned a lot from that. But if you aren't blessed enough to come, Google is your best friend. Other athletes on social media will help you out. Make sure to reach out. You can always email or DM me if you have any questions about any of my NIL deals. Several other athletes have. And I think that just making sure you're still having fun is important. It's hard to balance NIL, your sport, and school. So take that time to take care of your mental health and make sure that you're happy no matter what, because that's what's most important.
Well, I appreciate you so much, Acacia. Can you let them know where to find you at if they did want to reach out to you?
Well, you can follow me on Instagram or DM me. It's going to be at your girl Acacia, YAGIRLACACIA. That's on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. I believe that's about it. And then if you want to DM me, you could just DM, or if you want to email me, you can email me at acacialofton@gmail.com.
Well, thank you so much for joining. And look, if you haven't already, go ahead and make sure you follow Acacia. And then from there, go ahead and like and subscribe this video and stay tuned for next time. Let's go.
Thank you.